Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling for nothing less than World War III. And our feckless, incompetent Republican leadership looks like they're ready to give it to him. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush in this video. Anyone who supports a so-called no-fly zone in Ukraine enforced by NATO is calling for World War III, and potentially tens, if not hundreds of millions of people will be killed because of it. They will be killed because of this reckless and insane rhetoric coming from the Ukrainian president and our Republican dolts who've abandoned America first and have re-embraced the very neocon Wilsonian foreign policy that got us here in the first place. Now, let's start with what happened this morning. Ukrainian President Zelensky spoke before the U.S. Congress via simulcast in what was nothing less than a call to arms, as it were, for the United States to get more involved in repelling the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Before the speech, Zelensky was given a long-standing ovation by members of Congress in a show of support and solidarity. And here's a sample of what Zelensky had to say.
Is this a lot to ask for, to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine to save people? Is this too much to ask? Humanitarian no-fly zone, something that that Russia would not be able to terrorize our free cities. If this is too much to ask, we offer an alternative. You know what kind of defense systems we need, S-300 and other similar systems. You know how much depends on the battlefield, on the ability to use aircraft, powerful, strong aviation to protect our people, our freedom, our land, aircraft that can help Ukraine, help Europe. And you know that they exist and you have them, but they are on earth, not in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian sky. They do not defend our people. I have a dream. These words are known to each of you. Today I can say, I have a need. I need to protect our sky. I need your decision, your help, which means exactly the same you feel when you hear the words, I have a dream.
So you can hear for yourself the call for a U.S.-enforced no-fly zone over Ukraine, and he, of course, invoked staples of American civics like the I Have a Dream speech of Martin Luther King. He invoked 9/11 and said that Ukraine is experiencing a 9/11 every single day. Pearl Harbor was also invoked. So this was a very good speech from a rhetorically persuasive vantage point, no question. And Zelensky also showed a video, a very well-produced video, the horrors, all the casualties inflicted by the invasion, all with very sad, dramatic music in the background. It was a first-class production to which Ukraine has every right, no question. But of course, the video was meant to sway emotionally members of Congress who may be on the fence about militarily supporting Ukraine. And it seemed to have worked. Republican Representative Nancy Mace provided a typical reaction, claiming the video brought her to tears, which was, of course, what it was meant to do. Now, I gotta say at the outset that I think Zelensky has been holding out on talks with Russia to see what the United States' reaction would be to his speech. I also think that this call for a no-fly zone is basically a signal of Zelensky's desperation. I do believe, contrary to what we're hearing so much from the mainstream media, I do believe the Russian forces are, in fact, fully in control of the situation, and the end result of this conflict is a foregone conclusion. Russia will win. They will get everything they want, which is a permanent ban of Ukraine to join NATO. Ukraine will go neutral. They will be demilitarized, and Crimea and eastern Ukraine, particularly the Donbass region, but also areas around the Black Sea region, will most likely be lost to Ukraine forever. I don't see Russia giving those areas up. So getting the U.S. and NATO involved in this militarily is the only card that Zelensky has to play now. I also want to reiterate here how truly tragic this is for me as an Orthodox Christian. This is the second most tragic thing I could ever imagine seeing, two Orthodox nations killing each other. It is beyond horrific. But I must also reiterate, this is the second most tragic thing I can think of. The single most tragic thing would be if I saw the breakout of World War III. And that, unfortunately, however noble his aims, that is precisely what Zelensky called for in his speech. No, not in name, but in consequence, in inevitable consequence. Make no mistake, a U.S. NATO enforced no-fly zone would trigger World War III. There is no way around that. And of course would be World War III with the single greatest nuclear power on the planet. But that reality seems to evade so many worthless, feckless Republicans we vote into office. Look at this headline. Look at the level of absurdity our so-called Republican leaders are mired in. This is from Fox News. U.S. senators dismiss World War III worries, say U.S. forces would dominate Russian troops. Oh, really? You mean the way, like, we dominated the Taliban? I mean, how many of you, and I'm very serious about this, how many of you out there are willing to bet the lives of your children on the veracity of what that senator just said? And keep in mind, this is a Republican who said this. Jim Risch of Idaho. This is a goddamn Republican speaking like this. He literally said in the interview that he believes that Russia's demonstrated the most pathetic ineptness in this war with Ukraine, which they most emphatically have not. But regardless, so then he believes also that we'll have no problem mopping the floor with the Russian military. Mopping the floor with the single biggest nuclear power on the planet. With I'm serious about this. With Republicans like this, who the hell needs Democrats? Who needs AOC? Now, keep in mind, aren't these the same guys who were telling us that everything is hunky-dory over in Afghanistan these last 20 years? And we're going to mop the floor with Russia. Yeah, we'll put woke Millie in charge. That'll scare them, right? Don't worry, General White Privilege Millie is on the case. Here's Florida Senator Rick Scott going even further as of this morning. He actually gave Biden an ultimatum. Either arm the Ukrainians or enforce a no-fly zone. And you got to make that decision by today. And then you've got Lindsey Graham using the chemical weapons excuse, just like we did in Syria. If Russia uses chemical weapons, could that be code word, by the way, for Ukrainian biolabs? If Russia uses chemical weapons, well, then we're going to enforce a no-fly zone. That from the utterly repulsive Lindsey Graham. Now, fortunately, there are some Republicans who haven't lost their minds in all of this. Marco Rubio, if you can believe it, is actually thinking rather soberly and realistically about the whole notion of a no-fly zone and its inevitable sparking of World War III. He recognized the fact that a no-fly zone would not only require U.S. military forces to engage with and shoot down Russian aircraft, that's bad enough. It would also involve taking out the anti-aircraft systems that Russians have deployed not just in Ukraine, but also in Belarus. We wouldn't just be fighting Russia. If you don't know, the Belarus military numbers upwards of 340,000 when you add in reserves. And we haven't even mentioned China. The United States getting bogged down in a prolonged military conflict with Russia would only embolden the Chinese in the South Pacific. The CCP's mouthpiece, the Global Times, made that crystal clear. They mocked the United States literally days ago for no longer being able to fight two wars at the same time. And by the way, many analysts here in the West believe that's true. The world is changing. The United States simply does not have the capacity to fight both Russia and China in two different theaters. Gang, this channel doesn't exist to blow smoke. I'm not here to wear my Ukrainian flag lapel pin to show how much I care from the comfort of my own keyboard. From the moment this crisis began, I have worked tirelessly to fulfill my role as your fake news antidote to analyze what precisely is happening here. And in that same vein, today, I'm here to say that what our mainstream media and our Republican leadership is doing is, in fact, risking the triggering of World War III. But that's only if we let them. We need to stand up and stop this madness. contact your representatives and senators and tell them to back off this reckless rhetoric. This is a horrible war. Thousands of people have been killed. But the only thing that could possibly be even worse is if tens of millions more join them.